Why do holiday family conversations and gatherings tend to get so tense? Well, there's already this underlying stress that's high because of the season. According to a study, 51% of parents with kids under 18 report significantly more stress during the holiday season. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody because that stress comes from so many different places, right? There's planning, there's finances, expectations, travel, and just the pressure to make everything perfect. And when people are worn out and they're sleep deprived or they're worried, just their emotional defenses tend to be lower and it makes them more reactive. There's also the family dynamic with old wounds. Family gatherings, they often resurrect long-standing things like past grievances, sibling rivalries, or maybe a history of something that wasn't quite resolved. Some holidays just tend to bring up this memory of loss, whether it's divorce or death or broken relationships, and that can heighten just the emotional fragility of the season. In other words, it's not just because of the present moment. There's also a lot of past baggage that can come to the room. There's also the idea that maybe there's some more sensitive topics that are more likely to surface. According to a recent survey, nearly 40% of families report open disagreements during holiday gatherings. And the top triggers are politics, past family grievances, relationships, finances, and parenting. And there's also just this lowered emotional resilience. You have physical and mental strain, you have a disrupted sleep, diet, routines, and boundaries. And with people with trauma or maybe some difficult family histories, being back home or around certain relatives can actually trigger emotional reactions that just feel out of control. Because of this, people often lack the bandwidth to just handle that conflict constructively. And finally, there can be this expectation versus reality problem that's happening. Maybe there's a cultural narrative that the holiday gatherings should be magical and peaceful. But when real family dynamics don't match up with that, it can lead to disappointment and frustration. And those unmet expectations can lead to just emotional reactivity where someone feels hurt or judged, and then the conversation escalates. So what do you do when you know that tension is so likely? Well, you can do 5 different things. 1, prepare ahead. You can think through the known friction points before you go. Like what's likely to come up? What topics will probably be awkward? Baylor University's communication expert suggests that you can work out known hurdles before you arrive. So have a mental or a physical maybe list of things that you're okay discussing and ones that you want to try to avoid and redirect the conversation. You can also set realistic expectations. So instead of expecting a perfect piece, maybe aim for manageable and meaningful interactions. Remind yourself that the best gift might just be showing up and staying calm and not trying to fix everything that happens. You might also want to create some emotional exit options. So recognize when you need a break. If things get heated, you can take a breath. You can step outside for a few minutes or just move to a quieter space. You can have this idea of some escape hatches. If staying in the same house is emotionally draining, maybe plan to stay somewhere else, even a hotel, for part of the gathering. I'd also communicate boundaries compassionately. So before or during the gathering, set clear but kind boundaries. Like, I want to enjoy our time together. So let's avoid talking about this topic today. You can also use some I statements like I feel or I need to express your limits without making others defensive. Be gentle but firm because boundaries aren't ultimatums. They're really self-care tools. Finally, practice validation and empathy. When conversations do get tense, try to find common ground. You can highlight some shared emotions. Like, I hear that this is hard for you and I care about our time together. And use curiosity instead of judgment, which lets you ask questions rather than assuming motives. Now, that last one is a mindset shift that can really help your holiday conversations in total. You can choose curiosity over trying to convince the other person. It's this idea of I'm going to shift from I need to convince them to I want to understand them. It's simple, but hard to do. Right? See, now why does this work? Well, curiosity has been shown to lower aggression. A series of studies from UC Berkeley found that interpersonal curiosity reduces defensiveness, increases empathy, and lowers aggressive responses during conflict. So when your brain switches from defend to discover, your whole nervous system calms down. Now, trying to change someone actually increases their resistance. A psychologist called this a reactance, when people sense you're trying to control or correct them and they push back harder. So even gentle attempts to set this record straight can often escalate conflict. So shifting to curiosity kind of removes the pressure and it breaks the resistance cycle. And then finally, people just feel safer when they're listened to. Relationship researchers at the Gottman Institute noted that the feeling of understood is the number one de-escalator in conflict. Not agreement, but understanding. You can't control their views, but you can control the emotional climate by listening. So how do you apply this idea of curiosity? Well, you can ask questions instead of trying to make points. Not sarcastic questions, not gotcha questions, but questions like, oh, that's interesting. What led you to feel that way? Can you tell me more about how you see it? And what's your biggest concern with that? That shifts the energy from debate to dialogue. And then you can let go of your goal of winning. I know that's a hard thing to do, but if the goal is to win, then the holiday conversations are like a battleground. If instead the goal is to understand, then it moves into just a more conversational and engaging place. Remember that the idea is that you're talking to a person you love, not a position or an idea that you hate. The final thing about just curiosity is I just get curious about their story. And most strong opinions that people have come from some experiences, some fears, their identity, their upbringing, or some wounds that they have. And when you get curious about the story underneath the viewpoint, conversations often soften. You can replace how could you think that with how did you come to think about that? One triggers defensiveness and the other triggers dialogue. Now, this whole thing involves listening better even when you disagree with someone, right? And that's super tough because during conflict, our brain is wired not to do that, but to fight back. And when someone says something that you strongly disagree with, it actually triggers your amygdala or your threat detector in your brain, and your body treats it like danger, not dialogue. And that's why your heart rate spikes and your shoulders tense and your brain starts preparing for a rebuttal instead of actually listening. But there's a few simple techniques that can dramatically improve listening even in those moments. And the first is just to slow your body down so that your brain can follow. The Gottman Institute found that when your heart rate goes above 100 beats per minute, you can no longer process information calmly because your body is in this fight or flight mode. And so the first step is actually physical. It's not mental. It's take a slow, deep breath, uncross your arms, relax your shoulders, and drop your voice volume. And that sends this signal to your nervous system that we're safe and we can listen. Then you can also use active listening, but not like the fake prescribed version of active listening, but like actually be real. Like, so you're not just parroting back their words, but you want to track what the meaning of what they're saying. So you want to reflect back their emotion. So it sounds like this is really important to you. I can tell you care a lot about this. It seems like this hits close to home because people calm down when they feel seen. And then you can name what you understand, even if you disagree. Say things like, oh, so your main concern is blank. Did I get that right? Let me make sure I'm hearing you. You're saying, and this is going to lower their defensiveness, which makes your viewpoint easier to share later, but it has this heartbeat of you're listening to understand. Finally, just use the pause before responding. One of the most helpful communication habits is just adding a little bit of a pause before the person stops when they finish talking, because it's going to stop your reflex to just react. And it gives your brain this kind of buffer moment to respond thoughtfully. So what you can be even thinking is pause, breathe, respond. Not react immediately because your uncle said something that you disagree with. And that tiny pause can often prevent big blowups. Now, I will say it is important to just maybe set some internal boundaries. Like, you don't have to agree. You don't have to change their mind. You don't have to absorb their anxiety. And maybe those internal boundaries are like, I can listen without debating. I don't have to take this personally. This opinion doesn't define our relationships. And those things are what maybe keep you grounded while you stay engaged. You also have the option when things get too heated to just take a step out and not blow up. A healthy break is better than an unhealthy blow up. Like, I want to talk about this, but I need a minute. You give me a moment to collect my thoughts. Helpful things you can say. And maybe there's even a boundary phrase that you keep that helps you keep the peace. Like, let's save this for another time. I really want to enjoy being with you today. This is one of those effective calm down boundaries because it does three things at once. It sets a clear limit. We're not going down this road right now. It communicates that you care. Like, I just want to enjoy being with you. And then it just de-escalates without shaming like this competitive reactive argument. It creates really a protective boundary. So those are some things to really think through and maybe have a plan in place as you head into the holiday conversations, that you can have better conversations, healthier conversations this holiday season.